read together our text for this evening. Galatians 4, verses 17 and 18. Galatians 4, 17 and 18. They zealously affect you, but not well. Yea, they would exclude you, that ye might affect them. But it is good to be zealously affected always in a good thing, and not only when I am present with you. Having partaken of the Holy Supper this morning, beloved, we now have, as we are accustomed, an applicatory sermon that applies the things we've considered in an especially practical and personal way. The reasoning goes something like this. Since you have eaten and drunk of Christ's body and blood, and thereby, secondarily, have confessed your love, gratitude, and submission to Him as Lord, what manner of persons ought ye therefore to be in all holy conversation and godliness? We ought to feel the force of that simple argument. The drift of this Word of God this evening is that we have a calling to be zealous for Christ's sake. The idea of both the Greek word here in Galatians 4 and the Hebrew word is that we are called to burn with a pure zeal, to be hot and not cold or lukewarm in His service. This is the text, Galatians 4, 17 and 18. The word zeal, or zealously, occurs in these two verses twice in the English and actually 3 times in the Greek. Listen for it as we read together again. They zealously affect you, but not well. Yea, they would exclude you, that ye might affect them. More literally, that ye might zealously affect them. But it is good to be zealously affected always in a good thing, and not only when I am present with you. And from our text, we take the axiom or principle at the beginning of verse 18. It is good to be zealously affected always in a good thing. I've shortened that in our sermon title or theme, Zealous in a Good Cause. Zealous in a good cause. We're going to consider first the historical situation which occasioned this word about godly zeal. And then we're going to see how this applies to us, this principle or axiom, so that we might be zealous, in a good cause. You don't want to be zealous in a bad cause. And that we might be zealous always, and not just occasionally or most of the time or whenever we feel like it. It is good to be zealously affected always in a good thing. Consider then zealous in a good cause. First, the occasion for this word, and second, the application of this word. Zealous in a good cause, the occasion for it, and the application of it. We need to begin this sermon with some background history. A little bit about Paul's missionary journeys in the book of Acts. Some of you have dealt with this material in catechism, and it's a good refresher for us all. And don't worry, it won't be too deep. Paul laboured in Galatia. Remember, this is the epistle to the Galatians. He laboured in Galatia, or at least the southern part of Galatia, on each of his 3 missionary journeys. In his first missionary journey, Paul preached and laboured in Antioch in Pisidia, Iconium, and Lystra. These three cities begin with the letters A, I, and L. El. Antioch, Iconium, and Lystra. That's how I remember them. And then Paul returned to his base by going back over some of the cities in order. So he went back to Lystra, and then Iconium and Antioch. And on his way back, having given the churches some time to mature, he ordained elders. And in ordaining elders, that was the institution of them as organized churches. With elders then, they were able to preach the gospel, oversee themselves as autonomous or self-ruling churches which were associated with other apostolic congregations. You can read about that in Paul's first missionary journey in Acts 13 through 14. And this makes it clear that Paul was the founder of these three Galatian congregations. That's the main passage in Acts which speaks of Paul's work in Antioch. But there are others. On his second missionary journey, Paul worked there, Acts 16 verse 6. And at the very start of his third missionary journey, he was back again. Acts 18 verse 23. Now, at some point after Paul's visits, Judaizers came to the Galatians. And the Judaizers sought to bring them back to Old Testament Jewish forms of worship and doctrine, setting aside New Testament gospel principles. These Judaizers sought to turn the Galatians in Antioch, Iconium, and Lystra, and other congregations too probably, sought to turn them from Paul, the apostle, and from the gospel of justification by faith alone in Jesus Christ. That's the key doctrinal truth in Galatians. And from an attentive reading of the 6 chapters of this epistle, we can deduce some of the arguments of these Judaizers, because Paul in turn counteracts their arguments. They were saying, this Paul, he's not really an apostle, you know. He's just a preacher sent out by the church of Antioch in Syria. He wasn't one of the 12. He wasn't one of the ones who knew Christ personally. He's on a lower level. And hence you don't need to listen to him that much. We poo-poo the messenger. We shoot him to get at the message. This Paul is not consistent in his teaching concerning circumcision. Because sometimes he'd have people circumcised and sometimes he didn't. What sort of a man is, you don't follow a man who contradicts himself, do you? And this Paul changes his views. He used to say that everybody had to submit to the law of Moses, even believing Gentiles. And now he says that Gentiles don't have to keep the law of Moses, and it's wrong for them to keep the law of Moses. You see how they're twisting things? Half-truths, taking an evil way to attack the apostle and his message. Of course, that was before Paul was converted.